So there we were, it was in the afternoon. My friend's dad, the owner of the business, he had long gone home.
Oh,
We were
shoot.
stuck on the roof. The truck was all the way down the road. All we had was the ladder. So what we ended up having to do was pull the ladder up back onto the roof and push it up so that one end of it was on the roof and the other end was on a nearby tree,
Exactly.
firmly wedged into the branches on that tree, and then scale it into the tree to then climb down into a different person's yard.
Oh. Hello, and welcome back to the Voice for You podcast, where we empower the leaders of today and tomorrow. I'm your host, Joshua Fana. Today, I'm joined by a young leader in our community. He is a trailblazer for public health, fighting to uplift underserved communities. He has launched a statewide initiative providing free ECGs to thousands of student athletes and has donated more than 1,000 free 3D printed respirators to hospitals during the pandemic. He is also a nationally ranked debater, ranking number 1 in the state of Arkansas and the chairman of the Arkansas Student Congress Republican Party. His work has definitely not gone unnoticed, as he was named a 2020 Coca-Cola Scholar. Fighting his way through debate and leading his community through public health and the way of health, he is Mr. Ganesh Nair. How are you doing today, Ganesh?
It is a pleasure to be here, Josh. It is a
Definitely.
pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me on.
No, definitely. No, thank you for, taking a shot on me and joining. I know it's always a little bit strange to get that random DM from that random stranger from nowhere saying, hey, I have a podcast. You should join on and, talk to us. But it truly does mean a lot to me. So thank you. Thank you so much for joining.
I'm more honored to be in a position where I'm the one getting those DMs, because not too long ago, I was the one sending them, and I probably still will be.
Definitely. It's just a food chain out here. There's some people trying to get with you, and then there's people you trying to get to. It's all just a food chain of life.
Everybody's got their own hill to climb.
Definitely. But how has your day been? It's late at night, so the days.
My day's been good. I like staying busy, especially in summer. I think that's real important. Spent good part of the day driving. I just got back in town. I live in Jonesboro, Arkansas. Just got back in town from Memphis, where you're from.
Oh, yeah.
Which is why I'm still in work clothes. So don't mind the fact that I'm too dressed up. I'm not going to try and be too formal here. I'll relax.
Definitely. Jonesboro's not too far from Memphis. And, Memphis is I know we have a bad rap for the crime right here, but it is a good downtown. I can tell you it is a very good downtown.
Absolutely.
Obviously, you were only here. You probably visit Memphis a good amount.
I do spend a good amount of time there.
Exactly. And obviously you come here mostly for your research. Like you did mention, you were here for some work with Le Bonheur Children's Hospital, which is one of the most renowned children's hospitals at least in the Memphis area for sure. It's definitely very, very renowned. And I know I do some work with Le Bonheur's Kids Hospital too, with a nonprofit he located in the Memphis area too. So I definitely, respect the hustle and the grind to help the kids there. So.
Yeah, definitely. I think that medical research in areas like both of ours, because, Arkansas has some of the largest rural health deserts in the country. And then Memphis has some of the worst urban health deserts in the country, inner city areas.
Exactly.
I think hospitals in both of our areas have a lot of really underutilized data that could contribute to research studies on those topics. That's why I work with Le Bonheur. That's why I work with St. Bernard's in Jonesboro and their rural health clinics throughout Arkansas and Missouri. I do a lot of research through them and using their databases. And doctors, I reach out to doctors at both hospitals and a couple other clinics across the tri-state area to help me through understanding the nuances of what they do and how it applies to their patients in regards to social determinants of health. Because, not a lot of people in the adult world of medicine or research are focusing on that. It's not high paying, and nobody wants to drive all the way out to Earl, Arkansas, population of 600, only restaurant is a Subway. Nobody wants to go all the way out there to speak to the docs at those clinics.
Exactly.
And then their voices aren't heard. And I think it's important that if anybody is going to, it should be the people who live in those areas.
Exactly. I plan on I'm a rising senior, so I'm thinking of going into public health on probably a business track, going to health policy law and all that too. So
health economics.
Exactly. I totally see where you're going with, and you are right. There are a lot of, not just in the US, but like take India for example. There's a lot of, rural areas that don't get enough love and, attention when it comes to health and stuff, and that is something that society needs to look at in general, Emily.
100%.
Def,
100%.
def.
That's been a pretty defining feature of my journey from, growing up in the small town that I grew up in to reaching out a little bit farther out through the state and through the country through my ambitions in research and other tracks. It's important to be able to look around you, like where you live, to find the motivation that's going to drive you forward. Because, you read the news, everybody is on the internet, you see poverty is bad, crime is rising, homelessness is rising, people don't have medicine, and you read that and you think that sucks, man. But a lot of people are really insulated in what that actually looks like. And it's
Exactly.
important to step outside of your bubble, your community, your neighborhood, to see the people who live in the shadows of what, the spotlights are shining on, and to hear the people whose voices are drowned out by like the internet, megaphones that
Exactly.
more or less want you to hear what you've always heard.
Exactly. Exactly. I definitely agree with you 100%. But before I get into the interview, those hard-hitting
Yeah,
questions about the medicine and all the debate stuff too, tell me a little bit about yourself, your hobbies, your passions, and who you are as a person.
absolutely. Well, I don't know if I fully introduced myself, but you did a great job introducing me. I'm Ganesh Nair. I am a rising freshman at Stanford University. I personally am very interested in public policy and its implications on healthcare and social sciences in general. I'm considering majoring in public policy right now or human biology. I'll figure that out. One of my biggest inspirations is rural healthcare. I've talked about that a little bit already, and I'm sure I will continue to talk to you about it. Like the implications of how our social, cultural, and economic, models and systems create the health challenges that we then have to solve and create the problems that we then have to find solutions to. Really getting to the bottom of how we can prevent that from happening and how we can deconstruct the systems that create those problems in the first place has been something I've dedicated a lot of time to, from both a feet on the ground, like researching in labs, in clinics perspective, and also in being a rural, a local, and student activist. I don't know if that's a bit of a self-filled way to describe it. I don't think I'm an activist. I'm someone who speaks,
For
and I've been
people.
lucky enough that people have listened. But organizing on a grassroots political level as well to not necessarily give voice to communities, but amplify the voices that are already speaking in communities that are currently stepped on and trodden on in my state and in states around mine. That has all been something I've voted a good portion of my time and effort into, and they've been really rewarding for me. And that's how I think is best to describe myself and what I've put effort into.
Definitely, definitely. You are a man of passion, and like you said multiple times, rural healthcare, and
Well, I
Stanford
appreciate that.
definitely, definitely. And Stanford is a good, very, very good school for all that too. That's gonna be a question that I go on, more into later. But before I start my interviews, I like to ask a icebreaker question, to
Break
like
the ice for me, brother.
and definitely, definitely. And like you did mention, you are a man that does not like to keep, sitting in your bed. You are a man busy, and especially because a lot of people I've talked to, they say senior year, like after senior year is done of high school, they're at home, just not doing anything. They don't know what to do. Someone that has been busy this whole summer. So tell me the craziest story that you have had this summer, and how that maybe has transformed you. Not like on a, an educational level, but just the craziest story on the streets or anything like that.
Absolutely. Well, actually, like I said, I told you this a little bit earlier, before the interview started. I hate having too much free time on my hands. Maybe in 20 years, having no work-life balance will bite me in the butt, but right now, If I'm busy every day of the week, that's a good week. Despite it being senior summer, I've tried to work as much as possible. During weekdays, Monday through Friday, I work as a clinical research coordinator at St. Bernard's Hospital. So I do data entry for a bunch of different studies, and I enroll patients and I screen patients and all that. On weekends, however, I work as a roofer for one of our local roofing companies because it pays like twice as much. It's not exactly as glamorous, doesn't look quite as good as on a resume, but
It's experience.
It's experience, yeah.
It's experience.
Hard work, it's fulfilling work. It's something that you can go into the job, and when you walk out, you can tangibly see like the difference you've made, and you can see how you've actually helped somebody.
Exactly.
And I mean, I work for one of my friends' like family roofing businesses, so maybe the labor protections aren't quite where they ought to be. I remember it was 2.5 weeks ago. Me, my friend, and his older brother, we were doing some of the roofing on a house in a neighborhood a little bit away from mine. And we'd just about finished for the day. It was like 6 in the afternoon. So we started climbing down like the ladder to get off the roof. What the person who was living in that house wasn't home at the time, but what he didn't tell us was that he actually had 3 dogs.
Oh.
Apparently had been asleep that whole time, but woke up just in time to catch us trying to get off the roof. So these 2 pit bulls and this, not quite sure what dog it was, some type of mutt, suddenly wake up and they start swarming the ladder, barking, jumping at us. So we immediately scaled back up on the roof. So there we were, it was in the afternoon. My friend's dad, the owner of the business, he had long gone home. We were stuck on the roof. The truck was all the way down the road. All we had was the ladder. So what we ended up having to do was pull the ladder up back onto the roof and push it up so that one end of it was on the roof and the other end was on a nearby tree.
Exactly.
Firmly wedged into the branches on that tree. And then scale it into the tree to then climb down into a different person's yard.
Oh, snap.
Mm-hmm.
Dang. That's
so terrifying the whole time. But if I was really laying it on a little bit, I could tell you that that's a story about ingenuity in the face of pressure. It's a story of, stupidity maybe and quick thinking, which arguably is more important. Being able to think on your feet.
Exactly.
Good skill to have, I suppose.
You never know when something's gonna come, especially with 3 pit bulls waking up.
You never know when 3 dogs are gonna come.
Exactly.
Or something of that nature.
Exactly. The dumb person would have just said, "Oh well, it's just 3 pit bulls. What are they gonna do? Bite me a little bit?"
We'll wait for the owner to come home.
Exactly. Who knows? If the person got lucky, the owner might have came early, but
true. But I don't know. In a world full of people who are watching the dog, be the guy who's looking for trees.
Exactly. How were you able? Did you like push so much to the point where there was a hole in the tree?
We pulled it all the way up onto the roof, and then first we pretty much swung it onto the tree, and then we shimmied it so that it was wedged into the branches.
And did y'all just climb down the tree afterwards?
Yeah, we had to do it one at a time because if one of us was on the tree and the other was on the ladder, it totally would have fallen.
Exactly.
And we were pretty high up. Probably would have at least sprained an ankle or something.
Dang. I mean, it's better than.
We still went to work the next day. That's Sunday.
Did you charge that man extra for not telling you about the dogs?
I don't think we did.
Oh,
I certainly didn't see any of it if we did.
Dang. Well, that's always, terrifying stories like that, in the moment, it's like scary as hell. Mm-hmm. But then when you look back at it, it's just funny. It genuinely is just something.
I don't know where I heard it, but I heard somebody say, 100 bad days make 100 good stories.
Oh, 100%.
And 100 good stories make you interesting at parties.
Yes. No, that's actually so true. Wait, no, that's crazy. That's crazy. No, that's actually... He's right, because no one's willing to listen to I got a donut for half off today. Such a good day. No, they want to hear I got terrorized.
They want to hear you scaling, doing a tramp, like a...
Tom Cruise.
Or whatever it's called, walk, like across a yard with dogs underneath you.
Yeah, trapeze walk.
Trapeze walk on a ladder up to a tree. That's what the story they want to hear.
When they hear that, they imagine you and the feet of the greats like James Bond.
God, no. I promise my life is not quite as action-packed as James Bond, but it's good to have a couple, moments like that.
For sure, for sure. But thankfully that didn't give you PTSD, because if I was about to get into the mouth of two pit bulls and a mutt, I would be deathly terrified. Like I said, funny stories at the end of the day. So,
Amen.
but before I move on, congratulations on graduating
Thank
high
you.
school. It is a big deal for anybody, and now it's moving on to the next step. And obviously, the next question is like, what school have you committed to? But obviously, with the hat and what you have said already, we know that you are committed to Stanford University.
God
So
bless.
what about Stanford not only attracted you to apply there, but then at the very end commit there as well?
Absolutely. So, great question, by the way, Vesh. Originally, was actually planning to go to school on the East Coast. That was my dream for a long time. Applied to a lot of schools, got into, my dream school, which was Yale. But following getting in, I visited schools that were in my top area, and I talked to students there, and I considered what programs these schools really had and how I could utilize that to pursue my passions. I'm really interested in how you can combine like the top level decision making that creates the ecosystems that affect our social lives and our economic lives, right? The policy making, and how you can integrate that with the boots on the ground, bottom level actions, individual actions that people take in those ecosystems, right? Whether that is healthcare decisions in a hospital, or whether that's the more economic business decisions that different insurance providers and different companies make to either make healthcare and other social determinants of health more or less accessible. I mean, Stanford obviously has a very strong startup and venture capital and economics in general program. They also have, I think it was either the number 1 or number 2 political science program in the country. And their medical school is very famous, especially their biodesign conference. I've actually attended that. I was blown away by just what the scientists and researchers at Stanford, the work that they were doing, it was next level. Integrating those two seemingly different fields, policy making and then lower level healthcare economics. That's really where my interest lies. And then, not to jump on the bandwagon here that everybody wants to talk about AI, this, machine learning, that.
Exactly.
But I do think, in our increasingly modernized and technological world, any significant reforms and changes that you want to make in the long term to make something more accessible, for example, make something cheaper, make it more efficient, the best way to do that is to use machine learning and AI engines to power existing systems or to reinvent existing infrastructure. So just the intersection of the cutting edge in tech, like top level, like high quality political education, and then some really great startup economic and venture capital connections. Just really, if you're interested in how computer science or politics apply to anything remotely business related, Stanford is the place for you. Find no other school in the world with better institutional ties to Silicon Valley, to tech companies, and to that high-level computer science education, in my opinion.
Than Stanford.
Yeah, exactly. And that's coming from someone who isn't super strong on the technical side of computer science. I've done a little bit of work in, AI and machine learning. Like, I have a GPT or 2 of my own. But at Stanford, with the courses and quality of the education they provide, even laymen could become programmers by the end of a semester. And that's just appealing to me. That's the environment I'm looking forward to. That ambition, that drive that all these students are going to have. That is the ecosystem and environment that I think I'll thrive into.
I mean, obviously, Stanford, like you did mention, Silicon Valley is very heavy, especially because it is the school of the West Coast, in my opinion. When you say top school in the West, it is usually Stanford University, and it's pretty close, I believe, to Silicon Valley. And Silicon Valley is equivalent to tech giants. And like you said, AI is up next. And if we want anything to be better in society, we're going to have to become friends with AI.
Exactly. You can't beat it.
So,
You
George,
know, there's no closing that Pandora's box.
if you
Exactly. No, exactly. That's exactly it. Because AI, like any form of technology, it's neither good or bad, but unless we are actively and like consciously using AI as a tool for social betterment, it will be used as a force for social harms, right? It'll be
exactly,
used as a tool for the extraction of economic resources from those who are not privy to those tools. That's how all economic tools are used when they're unregulated and uncontrolled. We need to be aware of how AI is used, how machine learning can interact with our systems, and we need to be actively pursuing ways to maybe decenter AI as an economic tool and reorient it as one that is more humanistic, more focused on how it can better our society as a whole. That's something that I think is kind of a dire need right now, because most of the smartest people that you and I know when it comes to AI, they want to talk about the economic potential of it, right? And maybe the end goal is to make this or that system or resource more accessible, but it is a very long end
definitely, it is a long angle, especially
long
because
term.
we do have a long ways to go. AI just
Mhm.
started booming recently, like maybe 5-10 years ago with like ChatGPT and all that. So, we're just getting, and like you said, anything can be good as so long as we don't use it for bad terms. If we start using it for bad situations, then it'll turn on us just like anything would.
Mhm.
So definitely. But to get into Stanford and get into these top schools, you need to have crazy extracurriculars and crazy passions behind all that too. And you do have all these extracurriculars and all that to back
Thank
that up.
you.
Such as you have launched a statewide initiative providing free ECGs to many student athletes. So could you give us an explanation on what ECGs are and how you even got this idea to create these?
Absolutely. Yeah. So ECGs are electrocardiograms. They're pretty much recordings of your heartbeat to see if your cardiac rhythm is correct. Now, for student athletes, especially, they are put in high adrenaline, situations where a lot of strain goes on their heart. So problems in their heart, for example, arrhythmias, that's when your heart is out of rhythm. Those
Exactly.
problems might not particularly affect you until you get older. You might not notice them. But for a student athlete, when your heart's put under a lot of strain, those arrhythmias might cause harms a lot sooner. They could create cardiac arrests, heart attacks, strokes, and cause long-term damage. So by offering these scans for student athletes, and a full body checkup came along with it as well, we were able to catch these arrhythmias and these health problems in them before they manifested into more severe problems that would affect them in the long term. Kind of a preemptive healthcare was what I was aiming for there. And this, I started it in 2020 to 2021, and it is still a program that happens annually to this day. And since its first year in inception, the Health Expo is what it's called, has every year seen over 10,000 student athletes from across Arkansas and Missouri either drive or be bused into this expo center in Jonesboro to receive these free ECGs and checkups. And of thousands of athletes that are scanned a year, we have caught dozens with health problems who they and their parents have then been informed, and they were able to receive treatment and eventually continue playing safely. From that, who knows how many could have eventually had heart attacks and such on the field. The reason I first got involved in that was I had been volunteering with St. Bernard's since a younger age. Mostly, they did this thing called the Color Run, which was like a little marathon. And I was one of the water boys that, stood at the station and gave people water. I did a lot of smaller things like that. I played some sports on the side. I played soccer and baseball. During a baseball match, one of my very close friends, he was just in 7th grade, but during the middle of a game, between second and third base, he collapsed on the field. And luckily, someone, one of the coaches, I believe, was able to resuscitate him, and an ambulance took him and he was treated, but it turned out that his heart had actually stopped, that he had very severe AFib arrhythmia. And that kind of opened my eyes to how dangerous problems like that could be for student athletes. Someone as young as me at that time, could suffer from that. It needed to be addressed. So I talked to our coach about what we could do to see if anybody else had problems like that. And he said, I wish that we could do something about it, but it's just too darn expensive. And these students, these kids, they don't have the money to pay for it. I sure know I don't. I actually reached out to the other team's coach as well, and I got more or less a similar answer. That wasn't enough for me, though. The next day, I asked my dad after school to drive me to our local heart and vascular center. And I actually was able to sit down with a plumber, an interventional cardiologist, and talk about what checks and scans they could do to see what problems student athletes have. And he was able to explain to me in a really great way, really simple way, like what arrhythmias are, how they can hurt young people and student athletes, and what an ECG was. And at the same time, the hospital was organizing what it called its Health and Wellness Center, which was pretty much a little event where they would have a run similar to the marathon, but less than that. They'd have some yoga, things like that to encourage health and wellness. And I went and talked to the organizers of that event, and I asked, would it be possible? I know that a lot of the people, the doctors who are volunteering at this event are actually in the cardiology wing. Would it be possible to maybe have a station so that our schools, coaches, could bring their students by and get checkups and ECGs? And after a lot of needling, I mean weeks of needling, of phone calls, of letters, of getting all my friends to write letters, of getting students at other schools to write letters, eventually they actually agreed that, okay, whatever students come, we will give free ECGs to. Because I don't think they genuinely thought that a lot of students were coming by. It was just a 7th grader who was saying, oh, I want to bring my friends by to see if they're safe.
Exactly.
But, once the door is open, a crack, you can open it all the way, They give you an inch, you take a mile. I talked to my coach about other schools in the district that we competed against that might be interested in something like that. He just gave me the phone book. I called a lot of different schools. The first 4 that I called, they heard my voice and they hung up.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah, they did. But I still remember the first coach who picked up. Along with those calls, I'd sent out maybe 50 emails and gotten nothing. But he actually answered the phone. I told him I was a junior high kid. I was trying to organize free heart screenings for student athletes, something that could catch these serious cardiac risks and save lives. There was a really long pause on his end. He chuckled for a bit. I did not chuckle. He went back to being silent, and then he said, "You're serious?" Believe it or not, that was the first real yes I got. I talked to him about why I was doing this, like what was actually happening, how he could participate and bring his team. And he said, I'll look into it. It wasn't a big yes. It was one rural school, one gym. But that moment, I think it flipped the switch in me. Because it showed me personally, you don't need permission to lead. You just need a problem that you won't let go of. And the willingness to start, even if you're not ready yet.
Exactly.
And that year, 3 schools attended. My school, another school in our town, and that school that picked up the phone. But the next year, 13 schools attended.
Okay, I see the growth.
Thank you. The year after that, 38.
Okay, you're just doubling every year, pretty much.
Well, the year after that, I had over 130 schools from across the state and in the Missouri Boot Hill as well that were literally busing their sports teams in junior high and high school to come attend this and get these free screenings. Now, along that whole process, obviously it's a lot more expensive and a lot different to give that access to thousands of students as opposed to, a couple dozen from the local area. Honestly, the fundraising, the outreach to businesses and to hospitals to help sponsor this event, the granting, all of that was less difficult than building up the courage to get that first yes. Because once the door is cracked, if you really care about a problem, you won't let it shut again on you again.
Exactly. You don't let that door shut on you ever. And especially that.
You don't need a grand plan. Okay?
Exactly.
You just need to listen to what people around you are dealing with. You need to try to do something about it. And when the door is shut in your face, you keep going. You keep knocking. You keep ringing the doorbell. You keep trying every door on the block until somebody exasperatedly opens it and says, "What?" That's how you get started.
Exactly.
That's how I did anyway.
Exactly. Your story, the ECG stuff, that reminds me. When I was younger too, I had a heart murmur and I had that checked when I was like 10 or 11. That's one reason why my parents never really pushed me into sports that much, especially
Mhm.
because of like what you were saying and how that could lead to, fatality and all that. Mine wasn't too serious. The doctor was overreacting like crazy. We learned that a couple of years later, and they stole like a lot from us. But I did have a heart murmur. I remember when I was younger, I was like 10 or 11. I just came into the hospital. They put a bunch of like stickers on me, that's like to track my heart and everything, and they told me to sit still, and I could not say anything, and I was forced to watch Sophia the First for 30 minutes straight. So you know I because I never knew I had a heart murmur until like a month or two afterwards, when I asked my parents, like, why did I go to this, you know and they said I had a heart murmur, but it was just, it was there for a little bit and it phased out. I don't have it anymore, thankfully. And that
Very
also
happy
reminds
to
me
hear that,
of
man.
this one Indian movie, Jersey. You might be familiar with it, maybe not, but it's pretty much the same thing. The guy, he was into cricket, but due to a heart disease of this kind, he had to quit cricket and all that too. And that, yeah, obviously, since you're so interested, you should probably, I would highly recommend, especially watching the original version, because I'm a
Mhm.
big Indian movie guy, and the actor is one of my favorite actors in the Telugu version. He's one of my favorite actors of all time. Like,
Okay.
so I definitely recommend it. And it's a really, really good movie too. Sports drama, and obviously, it deals with heart disease, like what you have dealt with. So I would
Yeah.
100%
Sounds
recommend.
interesting. I'll give it a watch. And to
Really.
all the viewers out there, if you're into Bollywood movies, give that a watch.
Yeah, exactly. But you doubled, and then you quadrupled the year after. That's just so chill. If you have that one person take a shot on you, even if it's oh, are you serious? If even that one shot, can bring a lot, and just bring.
Mhm.
Sure. So I definitely see where you're coming from there. And the fact that you're able to take a real life experience, help in seeing your friend, suffer through this, and then be able to prevent that, not just for him, but your friends. That's truly great, man. That's truly, truly amazing for sure.
Thank you.
But with this initiative, you were able to donate also. I said 1,000 earlier, but the number is actually 1,400 plus free 3D printed respirators. I was struggling to pronounce that earlier. Now I got it. Respirators during the pandemic. And the pandemic was a struggling time to, give out anything, especially because, everyone was through screens, everyone was too scared to step outside because of the COVID-19. So what were the challenges you faced during the pandemic while you did donate these respirators to these hospitals?
Yeah. So the respirators, yeah. COVID was definitely a tough time for everybody. But coming from rural Arkansas, I watched firsthand as our medical supply chains more or less crumbled before my eyes. St. Bernard's acts as something like a beacon of healthcare for our local area, because the hospital itself isn't that big, but it has a chain of rural health clinics out in the smaller towns and communities around, where it'll send doctors out to those clinics to provide healthcare to patients there who otherwise wouldn't have access to it. And if their problems escalate too bad, those local clinics can actually ship those patients up to St. Bernard's. It's a great system. It works very well. But during COVID, a lot of those clinics had to shut down. Or most of them shut down temporarily. Some of them closed permanently. But that was to help, stop spending too many resources that the main hospital desperately needed. But even then, they were very short on resources, especially personal protective equipment. Now, during this time, during the expo and volunteering, I'd actually grown very close with a lot of members of the cardiology department at St. Bernard's Hospital. I remember one of the doctors there actually ended up taking me on a hunting trip the summer before COVID with his family. Well, my family with them. And, like my parents met him through me. It was definitely a very, a little prideful experience for little 8th grade me. But when COVID hit, I saw firsthand that like these doctors were being forced to interact with their patients, most of whom probably had COVID, with minimal or even sometimes no personal protective equipment. They were literally putting their lives in danger every single day to go into work. And they were still pulling crazy hours, working from crack of dawn to dusk, to like 11 or 12 at night. And even though I knew that I wasn't the first person that comes to mind when you think, this is the person who's going to help them solve this problem, I knew that I had the ability to do something, and this is something of a trend in my life I refused to sit idly by. There were obviously some challenges in providing this protective equipment for the doctors, right? As a teen inventor, you have technical constraints. I didn't have any formal engineering training. I just had curiosity and the school's 3D printer. So my first few prototypes, they failed miserably. There was a poor seal, the structure was inconsistent, there was uncomfortable wear, it didn't fit on people's faces right, not to mention scaffolding. I had to teach myself everything from scratch, from filament tolerance to filter types, fit testing, all while managing that limited access to parts when the whole global supply chain is under a crunch. But that taught me that innovation, creating something new, it's not getting it right the first time or the 10th time, right? It's iterative failure. It's failing a little bit less every single time.
Exactly.
You don't need perfect tools. You just need the patience to keep failing until you don't have to anymore.
Exactly.
And more than that, again, I was a high schooler. Hospitals can't take homemade products, let alone when it's coming from somebody who doesn't even have a high school degree, let alone a college one. So, anything that I provided had additional vetting and needed safety assurance and complete documentation. So I had to communicate with hospital admins, respiratory therapists, and St. Bernard's infection control officers to ensure that the design met the criteria that they had to use. All of this, I had to gain these medical professionals' trust while coming from pretty much the opposite of any form of credibility. I learned how to speak their language. That meant backing every claim with evidence. It also meant, showing humility, right? Understanding that I was the one who was intruding in their community, in their way of life. And even if I was trying to help, even if you're trying to help, you have to understand that you are entering an ecosystem that you were not part of at first. So you need to be able to listen and learn to the people who've been there before you. But there's also something of there's a personal drain when it comes to taking on large projects like that. You work late into the night, whether it's, for me, it was prototyping and printing. I had to hand assemble every batch to meet hospital criteria. And all of that's while juggling school and family and the emotional weight of the pandemic, because it affected everybody. There were moments of burnout, of imposter syndrome, whole lot of pressure. Not pressure that I was going to fail, but pressure that I wouldn't do good enough and that I'd let people down. So, personally, I've reflected on that time in my life a lot. I think that when you're in crisis, that's when real leadership comes out. It's not about being fearless or being perfect. It's about having the ability to choose to act when you're afraid of what will happen if you don't. No, because you're afraid of what will happen if you don't.
So did your school just let you, did you have to ask them to use 3D printers in there, or did they just trust you?
So the 3D printer was in the room of our East teacher, which is Accelerating Education Through Service and Technology, which is pretty much a student-led class where they give you pretty much free access to technology, and they try and convince you to do some good. So me and the teacher for that class, Mr. Balderas, shout out my goat, we were very close. This was around the time that I founded our school's debate team, and he was the facilitator for that. So we had already been very close for about a year. And when I told him about my idea, he agreed to supervise the project so that school admins would be okay with it. But for the most part, filament for 3D printers is pretty darn expensive, and the school couldn't cover that. So that had to come from fundraising from local businesses, or from getting grants from the hospital and local funding. If there's one thing that it takes a lot of convincing. There are two things in Jonesboro that take a lot of convincing. You have to talk to people for an hour to get them to take a vaccine, and you have to talk to them for an hour to get them to hand over any money. Because admittedly, there is not a lot of it to go around. I think that also having a strong sense of community can help people who want to start ground up projects, because if you can explain what you're doing in a language that people understand, and not just what you're doing, but what your long-term goal is, and you can explain clearly and trustworthily what steps you're actually going to take to get there. Don't treat them as like a resource you're using, but as a person that you're talking to and asking help from. Caring people in a community that they care about will reach out a hand to help you.
Definitely.
I would not be able to do what I did without the community. So just as like I wanted to help like the people around me wanted to help me.
Definitely. You can't do anything without your community and
God bless.
support that they bring to. And I'm personally scared of needles, and every single time I get a shot, I start freaking out. They don't hurt. I don't know what's wrong for that. I was having nightmares about the shots. So, I can see the vaccine. And the money, no one's going to give money up that easily unless they truly trust you. And to gain that trust, you have to talk to them, and, you have and build that trust to the point where it's like, yes, I will give you that money. And obviously, you're not, scamming them. You did use the money for a good cause and did help. Like I mentioned, more than 1,000.
1,400.
Why can I not say that word? God,
respirators. You can call them just protective equipment. PPE,
PPE, yeah. PPE. I've heard of that.
Personal protective equipment.
Yeah, that's a more common word used in the medical scene and all that too. But like, do you just like donate? Like when you donate, have you ever like given these? Do you always physically give them to the hospitals per se? You just ship them out, or?
Yeah. Well, for this project specifically, I went in person. I had them all, in like containers. The hospital had to deep clean them before usage, but I delivered them personally.
Definitely.
And obviously, I didn't like come up with like a U-Haul with 1,400 respirators. They came in batches because I had to hand make each of these.
Exactly.
And also, even when I had the finished product, like it wasn't finished, because with each batch, I was getting like user feedback. So like in the third batch, I also added a layer of cushioning for around the upper brow lip area, because that's the part of like right where the ends of like a mustache would be.
Yes.
Because there was a part of the mask that sat there to help keep it situated on your nose, and that rubbed there quite a bit. So having a little cushion there made it more comfortable for the users. Like
exactly.
Adding little things to improve it even after you've finished with it. It's never done. Your project is never done, because at its very best, it can be better.
Absolutely.
And there's something beautiful about that. If your work is making people's lives better, your work is never done.
Yes, 100%. There's always something you can fix in society.
Mm-hmm.
There's no such thing as a perfect item or a perfect tool or perfect anything.
Very true. Very true.
Definitely, I can see where you're coming from there. But not only do you have, this creative side to you, creating and giving back to the community, but you also are a researcher. Like you did mention, you were in Memphis earlier with Lebanon Children's Hospital doing a research presentation. And you have also presented research on racial and geographic inequalities, especially in cardiovascular trials. So could you go more into depth on what this research has entailed?
Yeah. So at that time, this was about 2 years ago. At that time, I was working as a research fellow and a junior research fellow, scientist in training at the Arrhythmia Research Group at St. Bernard's, building off of my long-standing connection with the cardiology department there. I was doing data collection. I was helping with the statistical parts and the manuscript writing for the nationally recognized researchers there. I did not personally set out to lead a national research project. I didn't have any broad overarching goal like that.
Yeah.
I asked a question that nobody around me was asking, because I was sitting there and collecting the data for all these great researchers' clinical trials, and clinical trials, they are the gold standard for who gets access to treatment. So why did these clinical trials look nothing like the communities they were supposed to serve? Jonesboro High School, for example, is about 85% African American.
Okay.
And our town has a large African American majority as well. Yet, when I was enrolling patients for these studies, maybe 1 in 10 or 1 in 15 patients was African American.
And that you have.
And then further than that, almost all of them were men. Like, we would be lucky to get 2 or 3 out of a 50-patient study who were women. So, I started to ask myself, why is that? I know these doctors, they're not racist, they're not sexist, they're good people. Why is it that their enrollment for their trials look like this? Working with the arrhythmia research group, I realized that it wasn't just about who gets enrolled. It was actually about who's running the trials.
Exactly.
Who gets to decide what questions matter, right? Because if you have a white man who is running a trial, then the questions that he asks when it comes to medicine, they're going to primarily apply to white men. He's not going to understand if there are questions that exclusively apply to people of color, to African Americans, to BIPOC, or to women. And further than that, women and people of color might feel less comfortable enrolling in studies that this white man is performing. They might feel more comfortable if a member of their community or someone who they shared a trait with was the one talking to them about it. That's why I built the Include Heart project. It analyzed nationally about 24,000 clinical trials in cardiovascular medicine. I led the methodology. I coordinated the team as the principal investigator. I wrote the analysis, and all of it was tracing disparities in trial leadership by the gender, ethnicity, and geography of the principal investigator. Because I think geography is very important too. Most of these studies are primarily happening in the East Coast or the West Coast. You don't see big organizations like the NIH funding research projects in places like Arkansas.
Exactly.
And I also, so I separated by who was sponsoring trials to see, are certain sponsors like the NIH maybe more likely to sponsor white men from urban areas? And are companies more likely to sponsor people of color or women or, rural people? And that was what we ended up finding, right? What we found, it was systemic. Now you're getting me. Communities like mine in rural Arkansas were being left out, not just as patients, but as thought leaders in medical research. And those findings, I dove into a lot of different subvariate categories. So who's sponsoring the trial? Do these trends of disparities based on gender, ethnicity, and race and region, do they get worse depending if the trial is small or big? Do they get worse if it's national versus international? What other factors make these trends worse? And how have these trends actually changed over the last 10 years? And shockingly, actually, this might surprise you, but over the last 10 years, the number of women, of people of color, or of geographic minorities, that is rural individuals, who have led cardiovascular medical trials has not increased at all. So we're seeing the same disparities that we saw 10 years ago. No progress, which is shocking because so much work has been done to try and change that.
Exactly.
So it raises questions about whether or not the system itself is the problem and whether we need to rework our healthcare economics from the bottom up instead of trying to fit solutions into the existing system. And I'm blessed to say that research was very well received, and I was invited to present it nationally in Chicago at the American Heart Association summer session and internationally in Sydney for the Asia Pacific Heart Rhythm Association meeting. And hearing global physicians tell me, we've never seen it framed this way, it taught me something big, about research. A lot of people are really interested in research because they want answers. But it's not just about answers.
Exactly.
It's about asking disruptive questions in the first place and making sure the right people are part of the conversation. Because in medicine especially, yes, women, yes, rural people, yes, people of color, but the intersection of those three areas especially, they're subalterns. They are people who, even if their voice is amplified, even if they speak, nobody is listening. So it falls on us as people who are trying to become and are on the path to become wheelers and dealers and power holders in these systems to actively and consciously endeavor to specifically seek out and listen to the voices of the people who are least heard. Because if we don't know what they're dealing with, no matter how much research we do into oppressed minorities, we don't even know what questions to ask.
Exactly. I get you 100%. And obviously, this research has taken you very, very far, and obviously something you're passionate about. Not just staying in Arkansas, but traveling to Chicago and Sydney. That's low-key kind of across the Pacific Ocean, the largest ocean in the world. So that's very, very far, and
very jet lagged.
Very percent. Jet lag's gonna hit hard, definitely. But you were able to expose the racial and geographic inequalities, and like you did mention, 75% of Jonesboro High School is African Americans, yet y'all got, according to what you said, either 10% or less than 10% African American with your trials. And with these presentations in your fight, like you said, it's not about the answers, but more about the good questions that you're asking. Because the better the question, the better the answer. The more specific and the more entailed, the better any situation is going to be. But with your research, going to many of these research conferences, like we've mentioned already with the American Heart Society Association, and your trip to Sydney, what is the craziest story you have from attending these conferences?
From attending these conferences. Well, actually, one of my favorite conferences that I've attended, it was the New York Valves conference that I attended about a month ago.
Yes.
In June.
Yes, I did
this summer. I attended to present my abstract on the Include Heart project. I've been trying to attend a couple conferences and present the abstract because I'm submitting the manuscript to the Circulation Journal for publication, and I'm hoping that a couple of the people who will read it there will be familiar with it at that point. But I met a lot of very interesting people during my time at New York Valves. And I ran into a lot of very interesting people as well. Not necessarily in the conference, but outside of it. In fact, right outside the door, wherein I was walking into the conference, right? I got there about 20 minutes early because I wanted to get some coffee. I'd walked around the block, but nowhere was open. And keep in mind, when I got there, it was the hottest day in New York history since 2012.
Dang. I didn't know New York get hot like that.
Hottest day in New York history since 2012. It was like 101 degrees, but it felt like 112. And
Dang.
I was wearing an undershirt, a dress shirt, and then a three-piece suit.
Probably what you're wearing right now.
Yeah, except I had a waistcoat on too. So it was just more layers. Yeah. I don't know why I thought that was a good idea, but at that point I was sweating like a stuck pig in August, and I was just rushing to get inside the building. So I'm trying to find the door to it at this point because I found out later, but they were actually letting people in the back entrance. So the front entrance was locked at that point. They were only opening that up in the afternoon. Don't know why, but I was circling the side of the building, and so I don't know if you know that, like in New York, the alleys are very small, and all along the side are like side doors and entrances. And as I'm speed walking along the side of the building to get around, someone from inside the building opens the door, right, swings it wide open to come out. And as I'm walking, the door swings open and I slam right into it. Or I should say, it slams right into me. Knocked me right on my ass, or on my behind, I don't know. Man. And left a little bruise right on my forehead for the rest of the conference. But I'll tell you what, it was a great conversation starter.
It was.
And I like to tell people I met there that, getting that door swung on me, I walked in with too nervous and it knocked some sense into me, or knocked the butterflies right out of me.
I mean, that works too. It's like, what happened? Yeah, I wasn't watching where I was going. I got hit by a door,
I should have watched. Goodness.
Nothing too extra, nothing too crazy. Just the door slamming me. But I'm ready to speak to you about my abstract if you want to. I mean, I got hit by this door. You might as well feel something.
Yeah. Ugh.
Definitely.
Goodness. That was something. The man who swung the door open, he was an electrophysiologist by trade, and he was oh my God, I'm so sorry. You okay? I was like, no, it's fine. Clutching my forehead, rocking. Oh, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
How
He
dizzy were
walked
you
me
in
in.
that moment from his scale?
One hell of an introduction, I'll say that.
Definitely. How dizzy were you?
Right afterwards, I couldn't even stand up. Like, let me be clear. I was speed walking, I was half jogging, and he swung that metal door open. So there
Metal.
was some impact there. I might have lost a brain cell or two, but all is fair in love and war.
Exactly. Did you leave a dent in the door? Do you
Do
believe?
what? I'd say the door left a dent in me.
Okay.
How about that? Goodness.
Yeah, it did. A bruise you could say a bruise is technically just a human dent. So,
Mhm.
but did you reach out to them, like the New York Valves, to present your abstract, or did they reach out to you?
Actually, as a matter of fact, so one of the people who runs New York Valves actually was a panel moderator. So someone who sits in on discussions of abstracts at a previous conference that I attended called the AF Symposium, or the Atrial Fibrillation Symposium. AFib is a type of arrhythmia. Anyway, I had applied or sent in my abstract to the AF Symposium, and they accepted me to present it before the panel. The panel would then ask me questions about the research. I would answer it. It was a presentation, right? And he took a liking to my research as the moderator. Afterwards, he talked to me about it. We had a 30-minute sit-down discussion about it over coffee. I guess I made an impression because later that evening he said, I am the host of a structural cardiology conference in New York City. If you would like to present your abstract, we would love to have you. That's how I got to the Big Apple.
Obviously, spending that
Goodness,
time.
I'll tell you this though, hotels in New York are mad expensive. I ended up staying with a friend. I could not afford that. I could barely afford the plane ticket.
Oh, yeah.
That's life.
I could tell you California was pretty expensive too. We stayed in a nice hotel for FBLA. I know that most of it was covered because it was an FBLA sponsored hotel. So
That's nice.
Like
That's nice. I'm glad they covered it.
nationals. Yeah. But everything there expensive. You could not get a bill. If me and my friends wanted to go out, you could not get a bill under $100. Like, it genuinely is not possible to get a meal once you live in California. And that's just
I hear you.
That's just how the big cities run, Los Angeles. We weren't in Los Angeles, we were in Anaheim, but I just consider them both the same. Because, Disneyland, you say that's in, you don't say Disneyland's in Anaheim, you say it's in Los Angeles, so.
I really need to study up on my California geography.
Oh, yes, you especially have to.
Yes. As of last year, I could tell you that LA and San Fran were in Cali, and that was about where my knowledge of it ended.
Okay. Do you know the capital at least?
Is it not LA?
No, it's not.
San Jose?
No. So it's the S.
Sacramento.
Yes. Okay. Third time's the charm.
Third time's the charm, baby.
Third time's the charm.
3 strikes in your app, but I got it on 3.
The baseball reference too. I'll mess with it. Yeah. But obviously with Stanford and stuff, if anything, you need to know more about that geography than I do at the moment.
Possibly so. Definitely. I'll study up.
Definitely. But these big cities like New York, LA, they're gonna charge everything because that's just how the supply and demand chain. That's what
Ooh, brother. Supply and demand.
Heavy. Who knows? Because I know Memphis, and especially in Tennessee, everything is going to probably go up. Because I know Elon's moving in some stuff here. I know In-N-Out's coming here. Raising Cane's is coming to Memphis. Where In-N-Out is putting headquarters in Franklin, Tennessee. So
for y'all.
Everything. Well, I don't know if that's really a good thing though, because then that means everything's going to shoot up because all these big companies. Because we already got FedEx.
Prices are going to rise, but it'll bring business. It'll bring jobs.
It'll bring jobs and business, but I'm not planning on staying in Tennessee like yourself. I'm trying to experience life a little bit. Only way I'm staying in Tennessee is if I get Vandy or if I'm going for free. You
know what they say about Vandy?
What do they say about Vandy?
Oh God. I forgot what they say about Vandy.
I didn't know this is still about Vandy. That's one of my close friends. That's his dream school. Whenever he's like, I'm just trying to get into Vandy, man, at this point. But my dream school is Duke, so I'm trying to go to Duke University. Yeah, so that's these are still top schools at the end of the day. So you can't gotta shoot for the stars, aim for the moon. Type deal.
Amen, brother. Amen.
You were also named the youngest Young Investigator Award recipient. So, what do you believe you stand out with this award compared to someone else who has been in the playing field of the medical health for much, much longer than you have?
Good question. I think that the basis of awards like that and what they represent, right, at its core, the Young Investigator Award is about disadvantage. The longer you're in medicine and the more connections you have in the field, the easier it is to do research, to get funding for that research, and then eventually to present it. You know people. The whole point of being a young investigator is that you are overcoming experience-related and age-related barriers to research a topic that you're passionate about and to actually make a difference. That's what all of the nominees did, right? These were all some very impressive people from disadvantaged backgrounds that did the most with what they had. I think what made me stand out amongst them, it wasn't just the data, it was the story I told with it, right? Most YIA submissions focused on procedural innovations or clinical outcomes in specific cases. I think mine asked a harder question. Who's missing from the table? And what happens to science when the people leading it don't reflect the people affected by it? I wasn't just presenting findings. I was challenging the assumptions behind the finders, right? That this was something that many senior researchers had never even investigated. And this is a project that took a course of 1.5 years to undergo. So it was rigorous. It had clarity, right? It had lived perspective. As someone from a rural, underrepresented background myself, I think that fusion of quantitative, precision, but personal, moral urgency, I think it resonated with the people at that panel. I think they could tell just how much I cared and just how much I put into it. Ultimately, I didn't use the data to impress, per se. I think I used it to illuminate. That's what I was trying to do. I wasn't there to do a performance. I turned the debate mindset off. I was just there to represent, no, not even to represent, but to amplify the voices of people and regions that the people who were competing against me and the people who were judging me both often overlook. Honestly, to try and push the field towards something more just. I think justice is a very strong theme in my life. Not to throw out a buzzword or anything, whether I'm focusing on the medical, boots on the earth side of things, or whether I'm doing the more policy and political advocacy side of things. I've always been very, very compelled, pushed by an idea that people have a right to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and secret fourth option, right? They have a right to justice.
Exactly.
Whether that's economic justice, having an opportunity to get the life that they work for, whether that's social justice to not be discriminated against, whether that is political justice to have their voice heard, advocating for a more just ecosystem, a more just environment for everybody is something that is a deeply rooted part of my life.
Definitely.
Something that I will continue to do at Stanford.
That's how democracy works. Fighting for what's right and fighting for what you believe in is justice. And I definitely can see how you are very deeply, deeply rooted in those fields. And speaking of justice and fighting and debate, you are also a ranked debater. You have a debater side to you, being ranked not third in Arkansas, not second in Arkansas, but the best debater, ranked number 1 in the state of Arkansas, and ranked 15 in the TOC, which I'm assuming is the Tournament of Champions.
That's correct.
Yes. So how did you get so interested in debate to begin with?
I watched a movie.
What movie?
7th grade. God, I don't remember what the movie was about. Or I don't remember the title of it. I do remember what it was about.
What was it about?
This little debate team from a rural area that, went on to challenge the state champions and win the championship. And I thought that was real interesting because I personally am very interested in the philosophy of the subaltern, which is a person who their voice doesn't matter. in the current hierarchy and framework of society, right? Is someone who, whether or not they speak up, nobody is listening. And a lot of advocacy that we see today, it's top down. It's people in positions of power saying, let me represent you. Let me be your voice. But it's not
Exactly.
actually giving the microphone to the people themselves, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's not amplifying their voice. It's almost taking it for yourself. I think debate as an individualistic centered activity has some really strong communal implications, which is why I didn't just advocate to be a debater myself. I founded our school's debate program in 9th grade, and I served as the team captain up until my senior year, right? And I grew the team from just me and 2 best friends to being a team of, I believe we're at now 56 members.
Dang.
With a $10,000 budget.
Okay.
By the way, that budget purely fundraised from businesses. The school didn't give us a dime. That took a lot of door to door, and raffles and all sorts of fundraising activities. But the point of that was I enjoy debating, right? I'm a soapbox speaker. I like the sound of my own voice. I'm not ashamed to admit it. But I also like the sound of other people's voices. I like being able to sit in a room and never have it go quiet. And taking these people who come from agricultural or labor backgrounds who don't think their voices matter and showing them you can speak in a way that people will listen. That had a lot of really strong implications for me. Honestly, all debate accolades aside, debate is at its very best, it's training you to use your voice. I think the practical implications of what you do with that at smallest level are infinitely more important than any accolade you could get in training for it. So yes, I've done well at debate tournaments, but 2 things I think are more important to me than that. One, being able to train people in my program who have gone on to achieve really great things. One of the students in the program has gone on to become the chair of our city's first Mayor's Youth Advancement Council, which is a group of high schoolers who talk to our mayor about issues that affect the youth of our city. Another one of our juniors this summer went on to become our Boys Nation senator, going to
snap.
DC.
Yeah, that's
and
who he is.
A lot more are going out and using their voices to go do things in our city and in our community to make their voices heard and make the lives of the people they care about better. And that is something that they're able to do because of the training and the confidence and the strategies that they learned through debate. And being able to watch that, it really does my heart well. But also on a more personal level, in the Arkansas Student Congress for the last 2 going on 3 years, I have been the chairman of our state's Republican Party. And I want to clarify, that leadership, it's not about imposing ideology. I work more with our state's Democrats than I probably do with our Republicans. It's about navigating disagreements with integrity. It's about listening with intention and building coalitions that reflect our shared values, not just party lines. And debate uniquely taught me how to navigate that and how to voice where I'm coming from and where the people that I care about and that I know are coming from in a way that is agreeable to people who might not share the same philosophy with me, which is so much more meaningful to me than a trophy on a shelf. When I go to college and when I move on and I live my life, I won't bring those trophies with me, but I will bring those skills. And as cliche as that is to say, it's cliche for a reason.
Debating can only help. It helps a lot. Not even just in a normal sense. Talking to people, being more confident on what you do, that 100% helps in any situation too. And what do you feel like are the key things that you have implemented to make yourself the #1 ranked debater in the state of Arkansas?
Yeah, totally. So honestly, I think that after my sophomore year, I went to the Tournament of Champions for the first time. Got my butt kicked, but I went, which is an accolade not a lot of sophomores can say they did. And I decided at that point, I'm going to focus more on growing the program and helping more people get involved in it in my community, as opposed to going out and winning tournaments or doing this or that. I think, ironically, doing that actually helped me grow as a debater infinitely more than grinding doing research would have. Because in teaching, junior high kids and teaching high schoolers these techniques and watching them refine them, I refined them myself. And my foundational skills were unparalleled. The ability to research a topic, to nose to the grindstone and get as much information on it as you can, get a nuanced understanding of it. And then being able to explain that in a way that any lay person, an ordinary individual can understand. Complex topics, right? Political ones, scientific ones, military ones. Being able to explain high-level theories and longitudinal implications in such a simplistic way, that is the foundation of debate. And a lot of people get caught up in the more ornamental side of it, right? The high-level techniques, right? How fast can you speak, right? What theories is your case built upon? And they end up neglecting the fundamental foundational basics that if you master those, you'll always have a leg up on, right?
Exactly.
Being able to orate in a way that is clearly understandable, that is emotional, but not so much that it sacrifices your credibility,
Exactly.
And being able to speak passionately and clearly, not from a piece of paper or from a laptop, but from your heart and from your mind, based off of your own personal experiences. Because everything, when I walk into a debate round, it is personal for me. I make it personal. Because if you don't care about what you're talking about, you should not talk about it.
Exactly. No, 100%.
Because you're going to drown out the voices of people who actually care about it. Especially the problems that these debate rounds are often focused on. They are not the type of thing that you can walk into the room and have your priority being, oh, I hope I get a win on the ballot. You should walk into the room hoping to have a conversation and hoping to share a perspective that the judge has not heard before and that your opponents have not heard before. And if you can do that, you won before you walk.
Exactly. That's how you get any W at the end of the day. You gotta be personal. You gotta want that W. If you don't want the W, then the W is not coming to you. Never. That's just how.
I think it's about more than just wanting the W, because everybody wants the W. But,
exactly.
Like, to win a round in debate is to say what you are talking about, the perspective that you're sharing, and the evidence that's backing it up. It's more meaningful. It affects more people. It affects them more, and it could potentially save or harm more people to a larger degree.
Exactly.
And to be able to do that, not off a sheet of paper, but to be able to actually understand that and then share it, you have to understand the people that you're talking about. If you're talking about climate change and how it affects the Everglades and communities there, you should be able to name a community there.
Exactly.
And you shouldn't just say climate change and oil drilling hurts communities of color in Florida. You should be able to say oil drilling in previously protected national parks literally pollutes the air to the point that people of color in slums are breathing in carcinogens. They have 2 to 3 times the cancer rate because of that. All of that is true, by the way. And being able to understand that, nobody is reading to that degree. Nobody is getting that into the details, into the weeds of situations like that, unless they can actually bring it out of themselves to to care about the people they're talking about. Not to use them for the win, but to be like, this round and this topic is an opportunity for me to educate myself on something that I have had the immense privilege of being ignorant of.
Exactly. And, holding yourself back there, obviously, that shows how much passion you have about debate and all that. And that's truly, truly, commendable. And that's definitely something a lot of people should have, that fire to go on and do something, definitely. But, with the research, that you have done, the advocacy, the work that you have done with the ECGs and the respirators. I'm getting there.
You got it.
And then with the debate and being number one in your state and the 15th tournament of champions, you were named a 2025 Coca-Cola Scholar. So how was that whole process, applying to the Coca-Cola Scholarship and then going down to the world of Coke and meeting all of these 149 like-minded people like yourself and being added to a crazy network?
God, it was really something. I'm gonna tell you, the last couple months of my life have been surprise after surprise. Honestly, when I first got into Stanford, I did not think I was gonna get into Stanford. I remember I don't know if I should share this, but I was sitting at a table with my little brother, and I was drafting an Instagram post and a LinkedIn post about my colleges. Stanford comes out the day after all the other Ivies, and he was like, "Do you want to check Stanford?" And I said, "I didn't get into Stanford." So I posted, and then I said, "All right, I'll check." And I realized I got in, and I cried, and then I was like, "Oh my God, I have to take down the post." It was like that times 10 for Coca-Cola. I was very lucky to even hear about the scholarship in the first place. A lot of schools that are on the smaller side and that aren't feeder schools, they don't have good networks for scholarships. Maybe the school will let students know about one or two local ones, but they don't tell you about things like Coca-Cola Scholarship or Liva Mas, the Taco Bell one, or anything like that. You know? But, I was very proud to get through every stage that I did, and I was increasingly incredulous with every stage that I got through. And honestly, right, once you've gotten to the stage of being a regional finalist, and you have a list of a number of people that you could count on one hand from every state, say California or New York, all of these people are crazy change makers in their communities. All of them are going to go on to do great things. So from that point, the last part of the process was an interview. A big part of that is at that point, the people who are in that room, they know everybody is a huge change maker, and they've read your resume, they've read your essays. It's about connecting on a more human level, because we're all people with lived experiences that'll shape how far we are going to pursue. And that's what I tried to show in my interview. I talked about my interests. I talked about how I CrossFit in my free time. And I related to one of my interviewers was a ballet instructor who CrossFit in his free time. And then I talked about how I was involved in rural medical research. And one of my interviewers was a rural medical researcher from Portland, Oregon.
Wow.
And then I talked about being the chairman of my state's student Republican Party. And one of my interviewers was a staffer for a Democratic senator, but still a congressional staffer. And I was able to share the experiences that have shaped what I pursue going forward and what I want to see change in the world I live in, and why, right? That why matters. Because we've all heard the cookie cutter, respectfully, it's true. Nobody sees a homeless person as this is how things should be. So many people, myself included, are so blessed and so privileged to not live in a situation that is that dire. Even people who live in low-income households, even people from rural or poor communities or communities of color, everyone has some level of privilege. And the first step to being a real change maker, in my opinion, and this is something that I represented when I applied to Coca-Cola, it's something that made me stand out in my community especially, is approaching every problem not as someone who is higher than the people you're trying to help. You are not above them offering a helping hand to those down below. You are both people. You have had the immense privilege of being born in a position where you don't deal with a fraction of the strain that they do, and you have a multitude more institutional supports than they do. Understanding that and rejecting that as okay, rejecting that as something that you can accept in the first place, is the first step to actually pulling the plugs out of your ear and listening to these voices that have been so long neglected. And honestly, I want to talk a little bit about Atlanta, about meeting the scholars themselves.
Go ahead.
Because, the imposter syndrome was something, let me tell you. coming from Arkansas especially. I'm talking to, like, I go there and I'm talking to so many incredible people. I'm talking to people who've created AI startups to revolutionize healthcare or politics. I'm talking to the like 5 different national presidents, right? This Boy Scout who went on to become Boy Nation president, my
Yes.
boy Morgan, repping my
Morgan
guy.
Johnson. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep,
That was
my goat.
super chill dude. Yeah.
Yeah, like presidents of like FCCLA, of so many different organizations. Another person I'd like to consider a friend, gosh, she's like I think she's the like the president of the Student Councils of America, but like all of them, like every student council, like crazy. And then I'm meeting on other levels, like people who went from being like homeless to being like astrophysicists and like astronomers, and it's like, oh my god, every person who becomes a Koch scholar has climbed a mountain to get where they are, and they are nowhere near the summit. And that is such an incredible network to be party to. All of those people humbled me to my core. And if I went into Koch weekend with a plan to relax the summer before college, I left more invigorated than I've ever felt in my life. Because no, they were also all inspirations. They all showed me, holy smokes, if you give a damn, respectfully, if you actually are willing to give it your all, you can do just about anything.
Anything is possible.
Any barrier is overcomable. Any mountain is climbable. Any trail is pavable. It's incredible. It's incredible what people with the fortitude and the intelligence and the intrinsic ability to empathize and care and understand are able to do with those abilities. And I only hope that the people I met at Koch weekend, shout out y'all, continue to do the good that you have already done. And the people in these upcoming years that continue to apply, use this wonderful resource. I'm active in the Coca-Cola social media page, Koch Scholars Connect. So if anybody watching this is going to be a scholar next year or is applying to be, hit me up.
And at this point, like I said, I'm a rising
I believe
senior.
in you, dog.
It's like, I talk to so many people, and it's like, if I don't get it, then it's like, I don't know. But obviously, talking to all of y'all, and I know there are a decent amount of people from Arkansas this year that did earn the scholarship.
Yes, it's crazy. I think it's the most that we've had in ever in a long time. We had like 4 or 5 different people. I know all of them. My boy Jack Krause.
Yes,
Jack. Me and him were kind of like this. He's into healthcare too, I'm pretty sure.
So I talked to Jack with the...
Did you?
Yes, that was one of my interviews. Healing Beyond Borders with...
Love that guy.
Super chill.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I also talked to Dylan. I know he's from Arkansas
too. My dog, Dylan Vincent.
Yeah, after we got off interview, and we just started talking about Sinners, because we're always wanting to watch it. He was just telling me everything about it and how we just talking about movies. Everyone's been super chill. Like you said, Coca-Cola did a very good job on distinguishing the AI, like the NPC people, from people that actually have a life and actually care about other stuff other than just the studies and all that. Because anyone can be good, like you said. The regional finalists, they were all super good, but not all of them can be human, and not all of them can make that personal connection on that level too. And a lot of people have told me too personally that they felt imposter syndrome while they were at Coca-Cola Scholars. That's one of the main topics that usually pops up amongst everybody, not just yourself. Everybody has said they felt imposter syndrome walking in and then meeting all these people. And to that, I say, y'all were selected for a reason, in my opinion. Y'all have done great stuff, like yourself, like giving 38 schools, 138 schools the chance for free ECGs and all that. That's truly commendable, and everyone has done their fair share to get to that level. And and that is what we want to embody with the podcast. Y'all are the student leaders that are the face for the next generation, and definitely is something that I would like to highlight. And I just aspire to be like y'all. I'll be so dead honest. So definitely. But at the...
I actually want to say, don't hype us up too much, because behind every high achieving scholar is a high school senior who has low-key no idea what we're doing. We're just trying our best to keep going forward on a path that we care about. And as long as you do the same, whether or not you get like the scholarship itself, not to sleep on, the financial side of it, because that's also very important.
Yes.
But talking about it from a scholarly side, if you are able to do what scholars do, what the Koch scholars do, then you are as much worthy of calling yourself one as any of us who receive the prize itself. Because the real, oh God, here comes the, what do you call it? The corny part, but the real prize is being able to meet with and work with people who really care about what they're doing. And if you really care about what you're doing, you will meet them and work with them anyway. Because good people find good people, I think.
Amen. Preach.
And
Preach.
if you apply yourself, then the people who apply themselves will apply themselves to you.
Definitely. That's something anyone should live by. But why do you believe personally you were named a Coca-Cola Scholar?
Say again?
Why do you believe you were named a Coca-Cola Scholar?
It's a tough question. Because honestly, I'd like to say that, the imposter syndrome was temporary and then it vanished as I realized, my true, shine. But in all reality, I feel very, very blessed to have been named a scholar. And as important as I think the work that I have done and continue to do is, to be a Coca-Cola scholar is to be a problem solver at its core. That's what being one of these scholars is, right? It's someone who's able to put resourcefulness over resources and service over a spotlight. Anybody who lives with humans can see human suffering. Suffering is a part of our experience, but trying to lessen that suffering, trying to make life better for the people around you is always a righteous path. But more than just that, I think that coming at it from a perspective that other people are either too scared or too ignorant to come at it from is really important. Everyone has their own perspective. Everyone has things that they have gone through, things that they have seen or heard that shape the way that they act and the way that they think. And using that to take the idea of problem solving and adjust it in a way that hasn't been done before, or push it in a way that hasn't effectively been executed before, to help people outside of what is already binarily understood to be possible, is what Koch scholars do on the daily. It's about taking the possible or the impossible and making it possible, taking the implausible and making it plausible, right? It's about seeing equity not just as an outcome, but seeing inequity as a design flaw to fix upstream, in the long term.
The Voice View podcast, to round out this episode, the Voice View podcast is about, our tagline is to empower the leaders of today and tomorrow. So as a student leader yourself, what is some advice that you can give either me, the audience members, or anybody in general about trying to be a student leader in their own community and having their voice heard?
You don't need permission to lead. Just start solving problems in front of you and more will fall in front of you, right? The great thing about being a problem solver is that you have infinite demand. There are always more problems to solve. And instead of getting caught up in how am I going to be the world's biggest problem solver, start with the small things. Your room has, water damage, go up in your attic and check what's going on. Your neighbor, the shingling on his roof is coming apart. Reach out and see if you can help with the roofing on it. Be someone that the people in your family can look to solve problems. Then be someone the people in your neighborhood look to solve problems. Be handy. Be a person that your community knows as this is someone who takes action before he needs to be asked. This is someone who builds before he feels ready. At the end of the day, you have to start where you are with what you have. Even if it's just one idea, one teammate, or one need that no one else is addressing. Because at the end of the day, all you need is one yes.
Yeah, no, 100%. That one yes can change everything and anything. That's also another thing too. You can get like 50, 100 no's. And then like in your example too, like the schools when you started reaching out, you had 4 coaches like shot call on you, but then that one coach, even if it wasn't sarcastic, are you serious? You know, that he took a shot on you and now you were
He
able to
considered me.
Exactly. He considered you and now you've grown it to a point. So in my example too, if like going to this, like podcast and everything, I was scared that I was gonna get a bunch of no's and like 1 or 2 yeses from people. But I've
Mhm.
reviewed like almost 1/5 of y'all, and I'm super, super grateful for that. And that's just because I had the courage to reach out. So that one yes can change everything for you. And then obviously after I started publishing episodes, more people started reaching out. I've had people, not even Coca-Cola scholars, reach out to me and was like, hey, I really like the work you're doing. I'd love to join you on an interview. And I truly, that one yes can change the world for anybody. And like you said, you don't have to be a leader for the whole world. You can just be a leader in your house or a leader in your community. And that's how you start off small for bigger stuff.
Yeah. And I want to talk to you personally as well, Josh. I just want to say that, like, leadership isn't loud, it's listening, right? The best leaders talk less and hear more. They ask better questions and they create spaces for others to step up,
Exactly.
You're doing a good job of that yourself. Like you said, other people are reaching out because you're earning trust in people who are listening, not by dominating the room, but by amplifying the voices of others and letting them speak. And meanwhile, I'm sure you're doing the unseen work, right? You're doing the late night emails or Insta DMs. You're staying up after no one's watching and no one's listening. And that's how you really create the success that I know you're aiming for, by the optics, but by the actual impact you're having.
Hey, thank you so much, bro. I mean, like you said, that impact is, I don't really care for, mine. I truly just have a passion of talking. If you ask anybody, like my state officer team, everyone will tell you I am a D1 yapper and I cannot get myself to stop talking at times. So, I love meeting new people, hearing their stories. And I personally, like when I started the podcast, I was like, I don't really feel like student voices are being as heard in society. Yeah, they're being heard, but it's not like as amplified as I think it should. So, this podcast, and then obviously I do have a team with me now, due to the success of this series, the Coca-Cola Scholar series. I've been able to build a 10-person team for marketing and all that, and then people reaching out to me, and now I have 30, 40, 50 plus new connections of Coca-Cola scholars who I know all of y'all, especially yourself, are going to go on to do great things in whatever field y'all go into. So, definitely.
Yeah.
But
I just want to say again to you, man, I'm glad you have a team behind you now, because looking at your episodes, you got a lot on your plate. And hey, burnout is real. So when you're feeling, tired or discouraged, like, come back to the people you're serving, Talk to them. Talk to listeners. Maybe yourself listen back to some of your episodes again. Stay rooted in why you started this in the first place. And in general, parting words here as a lead, don't aim to be impressive. Aim to be useful. And that mindset will make you the kind of leader people trust, follow, and remember.
For yourself and all of my guests, all the Coca scholars that have reached out to me and I've talked to, wish y'all nothing but the best. But once again, Ganesh, thank you so much. I truly can't say thank you enough for joining us on an episode of the Boys for You podcast.
Hey, man. Thank you for having me. I was very happy to come on here and yap my heart away.
Definitely. No, I'm probably more happier than you that you actually were comfortable enough to come on here and yap your heart away, So thank you so much for taking a shot on me and the podcast. 100%.
And keep in touch. You're doing good things here. You're giving voice to stories that need to be told. So I'm interested in seeing where this goes.
Thank you so much. And to the viewers at home, thank you so much for watching till the very end. Remember to follow us on all socials, including Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, and stream wherever you find your music or streaming your podcast, whether it's Spotify Music, Amazon Music, or Apple Music. Once again, I'm your host, Josh Malvana. Thank you so much, Ganesh, for joining us on the podcast today. and we'll see y'all later. Thank you so much.
See y'all on the flip side.